If you tried to buy a house in 2026 and felt stupid for even trying, you're not alone. It's not just expensive, it's structurally harder than it was for your parents. And the part that will annoy you most is this: the system didn't break by accident. It broke in slow motion. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you what actually changed. Not vibes, not stop eating avocado toast, real forces. And one of them is hiding in plain sight. Let's start with the shock. In 1971, the average American home cost about $25,000. Even after inflation, that's under $200,000 today. But in 2026, the median home price is hovering over $416,000. And that headline number is only half the pain, because the monthly payment is what destroys you. A $400,000 home at 3% is one world. The same home at around 7% is a different planet. That is why people say it feels impossible. It's not just the sticker price, it's the financing reality. Now add incomes. Since the mid-1980s, home prices have climbed more than 400%. Median household income has not matched that speed, so the distance between what homes cost and what people earn kept widening. And in 2026, that gap becomes a wall. Here's what that wall looks like. In many major U.S. cities, you now need a six-figure income to afford a median-priced home. The national median income needed is roughly $112,000. That is about 30% higher than what the average household actually earns. Now look at the extremes. If you live in Los Angeles, estimates say you need around $271,000 a year. In San Jose, it's closer to $323,000. That is not a normal affordability curve. That is a lockout, and it hits essential workers the hardest. There was a study that looked at teachers near their schools. It found the typical teacher can afford only about 14% of homes for sale near where they teach. In places like San Jose, a teacher can afford about 0.1% of the housing stock. That number is almost comical, but the consequences are not funny. Long commutes, staff shortages, burnout, entire communities that cannot retain workers. Now zoom out again. A huge share of adults aged 18 to 29 are living with their parents. It's close to half in some measures. That is a level we associate with major economic stress. And it's happening in a strong economy. So what's the real cause? Because if you only blame wages, you miss it. The housing market is expensive for one simple reason: there aren't enough homes. Supply and demand sounds boring, but it's the core. Estimates suggest the U.S. is short roughly 3.7 to 4 million housing units. That shortage traces back to the 2008 crash. Builders stopped building. Then they built too slowly for too long. And the country never caught up. So demand kept piling up on top of limited supply. That pushes prices higher. But 2026 has a second problem layered on top. A problem that freezes the market from the inside. It's called the lock-in effect. Here's how it works. In 22,000, mortgage rates hover around 6.7% to 7%. But over 80% of current homeowners have a mortgage rate below 6%. Many are under 4%. So imagine you locked in a 3% mortgage years ago. Now you want to move. If you sell and buy again, you trade your 3% rate for 7%. Your monthly payment can nearly double for the same house value. So you don't move, you stay, you renovate, you postpone. Millions of people do that at the same time. And the market freezes. Fewer listings, less inventory, more competition for every decent home that appears. First-time buyers feel like they are fighting for scraps, because they are. Now this is where the internet points to a villain. Institutional investors. Wall Street is buying all the homes. That line is not completely wrong, but it's also not the full picture. In the second quarter of 2206, investors bought about 33% of all single-family homes sold. That's a 5-year high. So yes, investors are a huge part of demand in some periods. But here's the nuance. Investors are not just giant corporations. In fact, around 91% of investor-owned homes are held by small investors. That means people who own fewer than 10 properties. So when you picture a single monster buying your neighborhood, that's often not accurate. Also, massive institutional landlords with 1,000 Plus, homes have been selling more homes than they bought recently. So the biggest names are not always the ones expanding fastest right now. But that does not mean investors don't hurt buyers, because investors have one massive advantage. Cash. About 60% of investor purchases are all cash. Cash closes fast. Cash feels safe to sellers. Cash skips financing risk. So in a competitive market, cash beats families, even when families are offering a similar price. This is happening most aggressively in the Sun Belt, places like Atlanta, Phoenix, Charlotte. And here's the part people feel in real life. When large investors concentrate in a neighborhood, they can push prices higher. They can also file evictions at higher rates than small landlords. So the investor story is real. But it's not the only story. If you ban investors tomorrow, you still have a shortage. And the lock-in freeze still keeps inventory tight. So the real question becomes, how do you fix a market that is both short on homes and frozen by rates? You fix the rules that prevent supply, and you target incentives that amplify demand. Let's talk about zoning. In many American cities, it is illegal to build anything other than a detached single-family home on most residential land. In some places, that most is around 75%. That's called exclusionary zoning, and it quietly shapes your entire life because it forces builders into the most expensive type of housing. It blocks townhomes. It blocks duplexes. It blocks small apartment buildings. It blocks the missing middle that used to be a normal path for first-time buyers. So prices climb, not only because demand is high, but because the legal supply is artificially limited. Now layer in policy. In 22-6, Senator Raphael Warnock introduced S. 969. It's called the Stop Predatory Investing Act. The idea is to make large-scale hoarding less profitable. Under this bill, a taxpayer who owns 50 or more single-family rental properties would lose key tax deductions, specifically interest and depreciation deductions. The goal is simple: reduce the financial advantage of buying homes in bulk. Then, in January 2026, the White House signed a major executive order. It restricts government-backed loans from being used by large investors to buy single-family homes. Think of channels tied to the government-sponsored mortgage system. The administration is trying to reduce how financialized housing has become. Now, will these actions instantly make homes affordable? No. They might cool investor demand at the margins, they might shift incentives, but they do not magically create millions of homes. And the shortage is still the foundation. So what does the rest of 2026 look like? Most analysts do not expect a dramatic crash because supply is too low. Prices are expected to rise slowly, around 3%. Mortgage rates might dip a bit. Some forecasts put them around 6.7%. But the era of 3% mortgages is gone for now. So the path forward is messy. The U.S. needs to build millions of homes. It needs zoning reform that allows more housing types in more places. And it needs to decide something uncomfortable. Is housing primarily a vehicle for corporate profit? Or is it primarily a place for families to live? That decision changes everything. It changes policy. It changes investment incentives. It changes who gets to stay in a city and who gets pushed out. Until the system shifts, many Gen Z and millennial buyers are changing their strategy. They're skipping the starter home. They're saving longer. They're waiting longer. They're aiming for one purchase they can hold for decades. A forever home, not a stepping stone. Now here's the question that actually matters. Should the government ban corporations from buying houses? Or is building more supply the only real answer? Because if you pick the wrong answer, you can waste a decade. And in housing, a decade is a lifetime.